topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome. Glad you could join us. Bill Martinez here. Our next guest is someone I've been wanting to talk to for quite a while in light of all the craziness and chaos that's happening in our culture today. You know, at every turn, you've got the growing unrest in our communities. I mean, look at what's happening in New Jersey, LA, New York, Michigan. I mean, it just goes on. And the rise of these so-called cultural heroes like Luigi Mangione and Tyler Robinson, the effect of, rapid fraud throughout our government and culture that's being exposed. Elon Musk, when they brought on Doge, said he thought he could find, easy $1 trillion. I think it could be much more than that. But of course, look what happened. They all but tarred and feathered him, got him out of DC as fast as they could because they really didn't want to be found out. Because the old axiom comes into play. People do that which they get rewarded for. And so all this fraud and all this chaos that's been going on is at the result of somebody is getting rewarded for it. Somebody is making money. And so where we are with all this craziness and us against them, we're the ununited state. We're the divided states of America is where we are right now. So people are saying, and they ask me, I go, Bill, is this, the beginning of the end? Are we beyond that tipping point? Well, Dr. Currie Myers is going to join us. He's America's criminologist, retired sheriff, and author of The Advent of Feral Man. Dr. Myers, welcome to the show. Good to have you with us.
No, it's always fun to be on. Thanks again for inviting me.
Well, Currie, help us out. I mean, people are losing hope here and thinking, because it's not like you can have a conversation, if it's left or right and, Republican or Democrat. And I've tried to bring it back to say, I think we need to consider, is it pro-America or is it anti-American? Forget about the parties. The parties are doing more to exacerbate the problem. We need to get back to, the foundational principles of what really ignited this great American idea, don't you think?
Absolutely. This is the collapse of moral authority again that's occurring in the United States today. And one of the major problems that has caused it, in my opinion, because I've done a lot of research on this, is the lack of faith, family, and formation in our lives. There used to be an important time in our life that faith was grounded in, the adage of truth, goodness, beauty, and everything circled around that faith life. We had a faith life where we, at one time the church was in the middle of the community itself, and businesses was built around that church. When people went, we had strong family units, strong father figures who were leaders in the home, mother figures who were loving, who did an excellent job in forming everybody, including the male of the family, the husband of the family, making sure that they stayed formed. And we don't have very much formation anymore. We've lost the ability to form our children correctly, not only in school, because we've pretty much given up on public education. Right. More and more people are sending their kids to private school or Christian schools or Catholic schools. But also in the fact that civility is not taught anymore. There was a time when we taught civility. We taught it in the public schools at one time for many, many years. I mean, when you and I went to school, part of our academic program in grade school starting out was about civility and how we treated each other, and patriotism, by the way.
Well, I can tell you, I was raised by nuns in my early years. And we learned about consequences very quickly.
Oh, yeah.
Corporal punishment, went along. And the thing is that if you messed up in school, you got punishment from the nuns. But when you got home, then you got a second round of punishment.
Oh, I mean, one of my favorite stories, and I'm writing an update to my original book, The Advent of Feral Man, and I'm doing a 2-volume set that I hope will be out next year. in the spring of next year. And if people want to go view my published works right now, they can go to my Substack page at drcurriemyers.substack.com. But it's so important to talk about how consequences mattered at one time. And the consequences, as you said, I remember specifically in grade school where I got into a fist fight with another young man on the dodgeball field. And we both went to the principal's office and we both got paddled. And when I got home, I got spanked again. And my dad, he was a loving, wonderful man and knew the right time to discipline and when not to discipline. But I also got a spanking, and it was more about not right or wrong, but it was about making sure that you maintain your integrity and keep your cool. Right. There's a time to defend oneself, and there's a time to not. Right. So it wasn't about doing hands on somebody. There's a time and a place for it, and you got to know when that is. If you're defending somebody or protecting somebody, that's the time and the place to, be a man and stand up.
Right. Yeah. I'll give you more ground when you are protecting the vulnerable and those that are less fortunate. But if it's just over a silly volleyball game or handball or whatever it is, any contest, I've been there, done that. I was quite the hothead, so much so that when it was time to play Little League, I remember I was 8 years old and I was we came from a baseball family, Currie, and I was looking forward to playing baseball. And I remember my dad telling my mom, I'm just not sure we should let William play because he's so mean that if somebody makes the wrong call, he's going to be all over the umpire. Well, I remember I remember hearing my dad say that, and that really hurt me more. I wish he would have spanked me, before I deserved it. But it was just, they were, it was a cautionary tale for them and probably for the league. But anyway, I eventually got a chance to play Little League and had a great time. But as you say, those experiences refine you and define you, and you get less and less angry, and you come to the point where you respect what the official is saying. Although it was quite interesting, I will say this just as a sidebar: my mother was very outspoken. I could hear her, from the outfield. Her voice was out there. And if there was something that the umpire was doing that wasn't consistent with what her eyes were seeing, she held no reserve. And I could also hear my dad, yelling up to the stands, honey. I
love it.
So anyway, so we had the yin and yang in our family. So, so sometimes I had to let my mom, do the arguing for me. Right. Yeah. So it was okay. But yes, all this stuff. But, getting back to what we were saying earlier, Currie, see, what people need to understand is what's being exposed right now has always been around. I mean, ever since this great American idea came out and the formation of it, the founding fathers knew that in order for us to be a government of, for, and by we the people, we had to be a people of morality, of a religious viewpoint, so to speak. I think John Adams said in so many words. So that was foundational. So just as you said, as we've moved away, and there's a force, there's a force for good in sense for that was, articulated in the Constitution. And as long as we stayed true to those principles, it went fairly well for us as we were, on this journey to discover a more perfect union. And we've gone through that process and had our ups and downs. But now, and it seems like at the turn of I'd say the 20th century, early in the early 1900s, it became more and more obvious that there was this counter assertion that was anti-God and anti-principles, anti-morality, that they wanted to bring us down. And this has been going on for well over 100 years. And here we are now as a result of turning our back on God. We can see, what happened with our education, what happened with our family formation, and the things that you mentioned earlier, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as you rightfully said, this is not something new. We've been dealing it with centuries. In fact, St. Augustine wrote the City of Man, City of God.
Yes.
As you probably know, I was in law enforcement for 24 years at the local, state, and federal level, and then I went back and got my doctorate, but I taught at Benedictine College the last 14 years. I just finished my last semester last year. Now I'm focusing on writing full time and going out and speaking in public because that's what I want to do now.
Right.
But in those 14 years, being able to have students understand the importance of this family faith formation and the causal reasons that can occur, especially with criminal activity, if you don't have those things in check. I often call it, if your mind, body, and spirit is not equally balanced and not continuing to grow, then you're going to be in a position where you're going to be off kilter.
Right.
And you're not going to be 100% because God wants it. God's created us to be this wonderful thing and wonderful human to go out and serve. But we can't spend too much time just on mind. We got to think about our body.
Right.
And we can't think. And if some people have their mind and their body all done very well, but their faith life is gone. And it's those three important things. But as a result, we now live in this society because of that lack of faith, family, and formation, that especially I would say most commonly in the last 20 years or so, when it's been on hyperspeed the last 15 years, is that we're seeing a change in the type of criminal archetype that we had before. Now, I was in law enforcement when crime was extremely high. This would be the late 80s and 90s, when crack cocaine people were in the streets warn about it. There were gangs fights. There was high levels of crime. But there was a different type of criminal. Today's criminal is much more feral. And that's why I called my book The Advent of Feral Man. It's this wilding of humans that has occurred. And it's that lack of civility and it's that lack of formation that's occurred. But it's fueled, if you notice, in the last 15 years or so, we've seen a significant increase in mental illness.
Yes, exactly.
And we've seen a significant increase, and it's untreated mental illness, by the way, because we're not treating mental illness. We have a tendency to enable mental illness. And we have what people call homelessness. And it's not homelessness. There is a small percentage of people that are homeless, but the vast majority of people, somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 to 90%, of people who are homeless, and I say that in quotes, is actually because of drug dependency, mainly drug dependency, and mental health crisis that's being left untreated. And it's the lack of consequences, because not only in court are we not having consequences for people's actions, but when law enforcement arrests somebody on the street, it used to be you would take them before a judge and they would determine whether or not you need to go to jail, you need mandatory mental health treatment, or you need mandatory drug or alcohol treatment, or a combination of those three. And in many places across America, like California and others, those mandatory decisions have been taken away from judges, or prosecutors themselves are not deciding to file charges anymore.
Right.
And as a result, we have this no consequences. There's no carrot and stick application in America anymore. People can do whatever they want to do and feel like they can get away with it. And in many instances, they are. If you look at the riots that are going on in Newark right now in New Jersey, just over ICE, there 30 years ago, Bill, they would have been arrested. Everybody would have been arrested for you can demonstrate. In America, we can demonstrate, but there's a process to demonstrating. In many states, you have to get approval from the city to say that you want to take over a street, or you want to get on the public sidewalks and block them. You just can't march down the street. You just can't march down a street in America today without some acknowledgement to the state that you're going to do that. And they'll say, yes, you may do it. But we don't even have any of those consequences anymore.
Well, look what happened in LA last year. They blocked the freeway, the 101 freeway.
It's completely illegal. And it always has been illegal. And why is it illegal? Is because if you block city streets and highways, then you're prohibiting travel. You're prohibiting first responders from being able to get from point A to point B to rescue people. You're putting ambulances in the position and fire trucks in the position where they can't get from point A to point B. That kind of stuff is done in third world countries.
Yes.
Mexico they do that when they decide to have riots. They'll go block city streets. We have never done that in America until really after COVID and the George Floyd city of or summer of love. That's when we started seeing this thing. But the first
up in Portland and Seattle, the stuff that they were pulling, that even to this day, Currie, that still exists because there's no consequences, to your point. And there's been this appeasement. I mean, the first thing is let's go back and talk about these people who are mentally compromised because of drugs and everything is poured into our culture, and the left, let's say the left, because they're the ones that are controlling the consequence measure at this point. They just acquiesce and they really don't have an answer. Well, their answer is, hey, we'll just use taxpayer money and give them money, give them drug paraphernalia, give them $500 a month or something to help with some of their expenses, but there really isn't anything to really address the root issue of the problem, because there's so many people on the other sides. And sadly, what we're starting to pull back the onion skin on is realizing that in a lot of these entities, there's NGOs that are tied to politicians. It's quid pro quo. And these people are all getting rewarded for all the wrong things and all the wrong behavior at the expense of the American taxpayer.
Social programs today are nothing but an avenue and a vehicle for fraud and corruption.
Right.
Because that's what they do. They instead of using the old age responsibilities of causal effects for people who are committing crimes, they have decided that they're going to fix them somehow with the use of money and organizations to do that. And when you have it, human nature raises its ugly head and is going to commit fraud and corruption. And as a result, that's what we've seen. And we've seen it all the way from immigration public policy, where they've used NGOs to help prop up, in many cases, illegality. But we're also seeing it when it comes to, my goodness, fraud, Medicare fraud, medical fraud. There's
billions of dollars, Currie, billions that are going, in Minnesota and even California. I mean, and of course, then Governor Newsom says, well, there's red states that are doing it. And, Governor Walz says the same thing. And it's like, who cares? What about, you're the governor of your state? What are you doing? And now we find out that particularly in Minnesota, that Erickson, the attorney general, and the governor knew about this, 6 years ago, and they did nothing.
It's exactly true. And there is fraud everywhere. I'm not saying that there's only fraud in one particular area,
no. Right.
But there is more fraud in areas where there's no accountability.
Right.
And I have proffered this concept, Bill. There are two different areas or states within the United States. There's the red state and there's the blue state. Mm-hmm. Now there's blue cities and red states. That right. There's many of those. Mm-hmm. But where there are blue states, there's this lack of enforcement. There's the inability to treat people for mental illness. In red states, you see enforcement. Where I'm at and where I live in the Midwest, I'm not seeing any of the things that other people see, because we have law enforcement that goes out and enforce the laws. Now, there for a while, we did start seeing some of it. Mm-hmm. But the public has started to push back. Why? Because crime got out of control. And that's what we're seeing now in California and other places. Yeah. Listen, when you had the new district attorney in LA who came into power, he came on a platform that he was going to start arresting people again, and he has done that. Mm-hmm. And he won nearly 70% of the vote in Los Angeles County because of it. Now I'm concerned about voter issues and voter fraud now, because we're not seeing fair elections in many ways. If it takes 45 days to finish an election, there is something wrong with our system when places like Florida that are just as big can know who the election is and what the results are by the end of the night.
Right, exactly. Well, and this has been the case. I mean, the longer you leave things open, I mean, this is something that was already studied, I think, at great length with, former President Carter and the Baker Commission, as you recall, back in the 80s. It's really clear whether, ballot harvesting, mail-in voting, all this stuff was addressed. And that the more you leave it open, I mean, that would be like all of a sudden, you got a Knicks game, going on tonight, right? Because the Knicks are the home team. If it got down and you had 10 seconds left, but the home team says, we need another 3 minutes. And so we're going to add 3 minutes to the clock.
Yeah.
What do you think would happen?
Yeah. Riots, chaos.
Yeah. I mean, and so, but yet somehow it's conceivable and acceptable in some of these states. And I'll tell you, my position on the voting issue has always been that we should have one day. Take the day off. Absentee ballots, okay, it's fine. Get these electronic machines that have proven time and again to be consequential for all the wrong reasons. I mean, right. This was a concept developed in Venezuela. Oh yeah, by the way. And I got to imagine Maduro, maybe he's looking to somehow gain some grace with the Trump administration, that he might have some inside information in terms of the electronic machines, because that whole concept was developed in Venezuela. And, we know what's happened. There's been lots of smoke, but the judges, the activist judges, the Democratic Party, and I think even some in the Republican Party, they don't want to know the truth. They like the way this is working out because it serves their purpose. This is a system that they've gotten used to working with. And, as Lindsey Graham said years ago during the Kavanaugh hearings, that it's all about power and control. It's not about the consent of the governed. Our Constitution has been abused 3 ways to Sunday. And this is why we are no longer a constitutional democratic republic.
No, I completely agree. It's certainly not what the founding fathers ever envisioned.
No.
That Thomas Jefferson warned us about this over time, that our own weight of our civilization over time is going to collapse upon itself if we don't have structure and we don't have discipline and we don't have consequences for those actions. So we haven't been doing those. And it kind of goes back again, a perfect example. If you want to view the common state of the United States, just look at the criminal side of it. Look at what's going on in crime. And it goes back to this red state, blue state issue. In red states, people are enforcing the law. Prosecutors are prosecuting, holding people accountable. And in many cases, judges will sentence. In blue state, and you have crime as a result, because of the consequences of action, go down.
Right.
So crime could go down in some of those areas. But conversely, look at a blue state. When you've had police officer ranks diminished. So there's not as many police officers out in the streets making arrests. You have prosecutors in many cases that have said, we're not going to enforce certain laws anymore. So those laws that used to be on the books are no longer on the books. You have judges that no longer sentence people. So there's a lot of people has caused, I call it victim apathy, where there's people now that are saying, I'm not going to call the police anymore because nothing's going to be done. Exactly. And all that's going to happen is they're going to say that person is the one that was the witness and the bad guys are going to come after me. Right. So I'm not reporting it anymore. Yeah. And then you have decriminalization. So we have many crimes that have been completely taken off the books compared to 10 or 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So well, crime has gone down statistically in those areas, but it hasn't. Its crime has actually gone up. We're just not keeping records on it.
Well, you've rewritten the code on it. So
exactly.
So that's the deal. I mean, I just started to say, Currie, that here in California, I say here in California, because I was born and raised there. I'm in Florida now, thank God. But in California, they allow them to steal up to $1,000.
It is.
So they steal $1,000. You got all these business department stores that are saying, hey, we're out of here. We can't afford to do this anymore without consequence. They get $1,000. And now you got these kids. Now we're in summer, right? And these kids are looking for a job. And where they would have gotten a job before in some of these department stores, they're closed. They've left Dodge, Yeah. So this is what's happened, whether it's California or whether it's, as you mentioned, the billions of dollars of damage that was done in the north, from Seattle to Portland to Baltimore, just straight across the top half of the country. And these businesses have said, "Hey, look, I'm moving out. I'm moving to a red state. It's tax friendly. They enforce the law. I can secure my investment and my investors, more appropriately." And this is what business is in the business for. They're in for to generate a return on investment for their investors. And when it's being stolen away from them by these blue states. The other thing that galls me, Currie, is these blue states and blue cities, they get in trouble because what they're doing is unsustainable. It's unaffordable, speaking of affordability. And then where do they go? They go to the national government, they go to the federal government and make really red states pay for their idiocy. How is that fair?
Oh, it's not at all. And I'm very familiar, especially with California, because I've done a lot of research. I have a radio show every Tuesday in California. It's in the California Inland Empire.
Mm-hmm.
And I have different guests that come on, many prosecutors. By the way, there's 58 prosecutors and sheriffs in California. 56 of the 58 came out against Proposition 47, which is what you were talking about, where there's no consequences for these property crimes that were going on. So there was a large number, but I actually went, and this was about 2 years ago. I went and embedded in Riverside County, Sheriff Chad Bianco, who just ran for California governor.
Right.
I embedded in, he was kind enough to let me come out and embed in his different units. And I stayed out there for about a week and a half or so. And I was literally with them when they would have to respond to some of those areas, because they would at least respond. And knowing that the prosecutor was probably not going to prosecute cases because they couldn't at that level, not the state prosecutor in that area wanted to, but there was no room. The Gavin Newsom, this is all Gavin Newsom's fallout. Mm-hmm. And Kamala Harris, because she was the attorney general when Prop 47 occurred.
Right, exactly.
There's no room for anybody. So judges were forced to not be able to do this jail, mental illness, or diversion. They didn't have the authority. Everybody got basically let out. And so there was no consequences.
You don't have enough. You don't have enough jails. You don't have enough jails.
There's no jail. So they just recently fixed it, because almost 70% of the California voters threw out Proposition 47, and they voted in Proposition 36, which allowed judges to do this again. But you know what Gavin Newsom did? He's not funding it. So he's failed to fund his citizenry, with almost 70% of the population said, this is what we want to do. And he's going, okay, watch me now.
Yeah. But he'll fund his wife's video projects, though.
Sure.
Somehow that makes sense.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, Currie, because I got to imagine, I mean, here, you're a retired sheriff, so you respect the men in blue. And how conflicted are the men in blue? Like, for example, in whether it's Minnesota, where we see quite clearly, and of course it's happening across the country, particularly in blue states, and also in New Jersey, where the men in blue are told to stand down. That how do they handle that? I mean, that, to me, that's psychologically damaging.
Oh, it's very psychologically damaging. It's having a major impact. We're seeing the results of it as a result. And again, look at places like Minnesota. It's a perfect example where you're not enforcing the law and have nothing to do with it. One of the biggest issues that have occurred in the last couple of years is the failure to enforce immigration law and help federal law enforcement agents enforce that law. Now, there isn't a mandate by local and state government to do immigration enforcement. That's not in their books. But in the past, you were always a good partner and assisted them whenever they called.
Right.
Because federal agents are in no way have the ability to come into another city and be effective unless they have the local county sheriff or the police department or the state police there that can help them, because they know the city streets. They know the bad actors.
They know the people. They
know the people. They know who's bad and who's good. They know the community, and their job is to work with them and help guide them in the best way to make that apprehension. And we wouldn't even have to be in this position if the jails, the county sheriffs, were allowed, and in some cases, if they are allowed, they have decided not to. The blue sheriffs has decided not to work with ICE and let people out on a retainer automatically to ICE.
Right.
So it used to be when I was sheriff, and it still is in the Midwest. If ICE has a retainer, they'll call the sheriff. The sheriff will hold that person until ICE gets there. Yeah. And then they will turn over that person to ICE because they have a retainer for his arrest, his or her arrest, to be held under immigration authority.
Right.
None of that is being done today in the blue states areas. They are failing to work. So what happens? Often a criminal, illegal immigrant is released back into the populace,
general population,
and ICE has to go try to find him or her, and get them off the street, which is increasing the danger, the problems, the associations that can occur. And so they shouldn't even be put, I shouldn't even be put in a position where they have to go around and try to look for people on the city streets of America. Yeah. Local law enforcement is in a unique position to help them and be a partner with them. No, not enforce directly on their own immigration authority. Now, some places are doing that now, and I give them credit, actually. Where I'm at in Kansas, the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, the Attorney General there, Chris Kobach, has given the KBI special agents, and I used to be one of those, has given them the authority to help and do immigration enforcement, and they've been given that title under the federal government now. But in the past, you didn't need to have to do that.
Right. It's amazing. It really defies common sense on so many levels. Like you said, here they already are contained. It's an easy transfer, but no, out of their own stubbornness and their ideology. And what really disturbs me, Currie, is that they have the nerve to say that, they're trying to protect people when in fact they're doing the exact opposite. I mean, those two people that died in Minnesota was so unnecessary and preventable. And to me, it doesn't lie on the doorstep of ICE. It lies at the doorstep of the governor, Mayor Fry, and Ellison for not calming things down and doing what leadership, should do in terms of getting these people who you had such a mandate of voters saying, look, we want illegal immigrants out of the country. And the first goal was getting the worst of the worst. But how can you get the worst of the worst if leadership in these blue states are getting in the way and they're inhibiting the solution?
Bill, this is totally and solely a crime of politics.
Yes.
The only reason why we're in this state in America today is because of political influence. There's no other reason why it's existed. In many places, the laws are still on the books for them to be able to do these enforcement. They ignore them.
Right.
Some of them have done away with the laws. That we are in this situation today because of politics. We're not in this situation because of law enforcement. We're not in this situation because of the public, unless if you consider the public being voters and being hijacked in many ways by different parties. This is a consequence of the politics, and politicians have gotten involved because they want to have an agenda. And that agenda in many ways could be increasing their political power. It all goes back to the sins of pride and the sins of power. And that's the kind of things, but we're damaging and we're hurting people as a result. If someone is in jail, that is not in jail, that should be in jail, they could be out and they could be reoffending. Violent offenders, this is statistically so, violent offenders will reoffend 65% of the time 3 years after they get out. It raises to nearly 70% after 5 years of getting out. These are violent offenders.
Right.
We know, data will tell us that people will reoffend if they're violent offenders. We need to be watching them.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
And we're not watching them anymore. And now they're getting out, they're reoffending, and there's a rape and there's a murder that occurs as a result that didn't have to happen because they could have been in jail. And with the anarchy in the streets, because we've allowed it to happen, in many cases, some of that is against the law and we allow it, the anarchy in the streets has resulted in people getting hurt and killed, which shouldn't have happened.
and it goes back to what we were talking about, is that there is a systemic attack on the United States and the values that we hold, the great American dream that we grew up with. And people need to open up their eyes to realize, I mean, just like what's happening in New Jersey, even the governor is saying there's a lot of outside forces. And of course, there's evidence there. I mean, the kind of material, Currie, you see these guys coming in with, I mean, professional signs, professional equipment. The governor is saying at least 50% of them are outside agents, Antifa types, that they don't care about the local community. They're there to do everything they can to disassemble our democratic republic.
I will tell you one thing too, is that, and this is a phenomenon I haven't seen. It kind of goes back to police, local police especially, used to be very corrupt. I'm talking about long, long ago, because it was controlled totally by politics. In fact, places like, if you look at like Kansas City, Missouri, for instance, became highly political, where the state had to take it over in about 1950 because of the organized crime that was occurring. And now the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department, which, by the way, now is an excellent department, very professional, very well trained, very good individuals. They are now run by a board of commissioners, and the board of commissioners are from different people, including the governor's office, the attorney general's office, the mayor's office. So it's diversified. It's not just a mayor that says, put some puppet in a position to say, you're going to do this. When I was in law enforcement, mayors did not get involved in public safety other than saying, here's the main direction that we want to do. We want to enforce the law. We want to be more safe, whatever it may be. And then hiring a police chief, and he or she would then run the department as they see fit. And now we're not seeing that. We're seeing mayors that are becoming super police chiefs and dictating what a chief can do and can't do. And they're purposely hiring somebody that's just going to be a lackey to their wishes, instead of standing up. And sometimes you got to say, I'm sorry, Mayor, I can't do this because it's a violation of this law or that law. And maybe it's a constitutional issue. And we're not seeing that anymore. So we have way too many cities in America today that have been highly politicized because the mayors have decided to make it an arm of their political system.
Well, and the thing is, it violates the basic premise of the fact that things, the way things should operate is politics is supposed to be downstream the culture. And what it's done is it's flipped themselves and put themselves ahead of the culture to where the culture is downstream the political category. So what's happening, because of the aggression and the conflict that's happening politically, well, what do you expect the culture to do? It's an outgrowth of the political genealogy that has now taken over instead of the other way around. So forget this idea that we're a government of, for, by, we the people. That checked out a long time ago, Currie.
Yeah, and these social contagions that I referred to earlier, with the increase in the internet and website capabilities, we're seeing that there was a trend that you can see trend lines on mental health decline as we started seeing an increase in the use of technology and social media. So they're kind of going down and going up at the same. More mental illness, as more and more information flow is coming to us. Most of the information flow is worthless. We're not being informed by it correctly. It's just stuff that kind of comes into our mind.
We're being propagandized.
We're being manipulated. And then
totally.
The problem with that is, once you become manipulated through social contagions and others, it can, I'm not a psychiatrist, but if you speak to many, that's where the more advanced dark psychological traits can start impacting people. Like narcissism, Machiavellianism, certain psychopathies, and then unfortunately it can get into even sadism and sadistic behavior. So it's called the dark tetrads. And we're seeing an increase in that kind of the dark psychological traits. And that goes back to why I wrote the book, The Advent of Feral Man, and writing an update. And that one will be available we're going to do it as a not just on my Substack, but we're going to put it out as a book.
Oh, good.
Because now that I'm speaking more in public, it's something that I want to be able to give to people in the audience.
Right.
But it's something that we have to consider as extremely important is how the internet technology and all those are affecting us, and without being properly formed, without having the proper faith, without having the proper family to help guide us, it's diving us into this hellhole that gets us into a position where we're not being godly. We're no longer being formed in his image. We're being wilded.
Exactly. Well, Dr. Myers, I got to tell you, my observation is that, in a sense, how you describe this is that I call it the siloing of America, because when you silo yourself, this is one thing that's always bothered me. I just have never been one to want to be mediocritized. Socialism and some of these government institutions and that want to, particularly, unions. And I was a union guy in my broadcasting career early on, but what I saw was that everybody was being mediocritized. They didn't promote excellence. They wanted you to operate at a certain level. As long as you did that, you were okay. You're a good member in standing. And what I observed was that it was the dumbing down of the broadcast class that, and my colleagues that were in there. And I was one to fight against it, and they were surprised. And even to this day, they'll call me up and go, "Bill, you were exactly right." I said, "Well, it's just something I just inherently resisted. Was I didn't want somebody to tell me, how good I could be, or that I couldn't say certain things, and that we couldn't have these conversations, because it really dumbs us all down. And if you're siloed, then all you're listening to is what's in that silo. And there's no question that if you're in there, it's going to eventually cause the frustration that you're talking about, that's going to cause one to strike out and do these things that are totally uncivil."
Moral relativism leads to failure. I mean, that's all it is. And the good news is that I think we're seeing a seed change in many Americans today, where that experiment with moral relativism, they have seen personally, has failed. It's failed them. It's failed their loved ones. And they want to get back to some core competencies that was originally formed the United States of America. And that's the good news today. So there's some dark things occurring, and there's some behaviors we don't like, but I see an opportunity for many people to start changing their ways. And I think there are many people today. We're seeing an increase in Christianity just recently in the last couple of years, both in Protestant and Catholic churches. There are people that are going and turning. There's no one to turn to when there's moral relativism except yourself. They now are seeing and understanding God and knowing that they have a greater purpose in their lives than them.
Well, they must run to the truth. This is what the show has been about from day one, Currie, is that we're in pursuit of the truth, because that's where the power of humanity and the excellence of humanity comes from, is when you're seeking the truth. And the truth is found in one place and one place only, as God Almighty himself. That's what you need to run to. And when you run to that and you find the truth, then truly you will be set free. And all that you've maybe even dreamed about and hoped for. I mean, when you look at the foundations of this country, a great movie which was out here about a month ago, The Great Awakening, which tells the story of George Whitefield and Benjamin Franklin, and how it set up the colonies to really coalesce their thinking and their target of what the colonies had to do, what was going to be their charge, what was going to be their moral high ground. And they discovered in all this that it was freedom. That's what they were fighting for. But freedom wasn't going to come from a government. They knew, fortunately, because of their religious background, they knew that freedom came from God and God Almighty alone.
Absolutely. There's no question about it. And that's the compass that one of the reasons I love you and I love your work and I love your show is that you have set that moral compass and people understand it. And the more that they can see people like us willing to talk about it, explain it, understand it, because not everybody can see the weeds that are underneath everything. But
Right.
the more that we can bring this out and talk about it in the public, the more people can slow down and realize that it's not about them. It's about service to God. And the United States of America was formed with the providence of the Almighty.
Right.
And as long as we keep that in mind our entire time, we're going to be good.
Right. And like in that movie, Currie, there was a moment there when the question was, who are we doing this for? And they realized that we're not doing it for ourselves, to your point. We're doing it for the next generation and
Yep.
the generation to follow. And this is what this is all about. And, I have lived enough years and by experience, I can share with total conviction that God alone is the solution. And unless we turn to God, we are going to lose this great American experiment. There was no guarantee that America would always be just because it has been. There have been a legacy of countries, of nations that were so epic and so huge that people thought never in a million years would they fall. But we know history. History is clear and what happened to them. And we're falling victim. It's like we're following in their footsteps, to become extinct, unless because we serve a forgiving and loving and merciful God who says, look, if you'll turn from your wicked ways, here I am. I'm waiting for you, and I will forgive your sin, and I'll heal your land. And, that's the opportunity that lies before us. God is really clear in the solution. All we need to do is take heed to it, right?
Absolutely. For years, I struggled trying to understand why all this happens, why God would allow these things to happen.
Right.
And I know now these things happen because God has given us free will.
Right.
God, in his power, in his ability to say, you are so free and I love you so much, I'm going to give you free will. And he gave the angels free will, and a third of them fell. And so there's going to be many of us that are going to fall. So who's going to win? The good news, Christ won on the cross.
Amen. Yes.
So we just got to keep it going.
Yeah, he gave us the ultimate sacrifice that we would be free.
Yep.
And to me, that's the ultimate gift of God is our freedom. Dr. Currie Myers, America's criminologist, retired sheriff, and author of The Advent of Feral Man, which is going to be coming out in a new book, as he gave us breaking news on today. So be looking forward to that. Currie, as we wrap things up, I'm going to give you the last word to summarize and bring us home. Go ahead.
Well, it's as always, I think people need to look at our country with opportunity. And to view things in that spectrum of opportunity. We've been warned. We're talking about the warnings that occur in this country, but this country has been given a great example, and it's been given to us by God. We just keep on doing the things necessary to make sure that we keep our faith life in order, our families in order, and we form people correctly. And when that happens, everything is going to be fine. But if we start listening to the chatter, we're going to get lost.
Well, the other thing too, I will say as a parting word here, Currie, is that I encourage the audience always, don't just take our word from it. Hopefully we've motivated you to such a degree that you'll do your own research and own your own knowledge. Don't be in a situation where, I often have to ask people, and sometimes my kids, they go, who told you that? It's kind of like in the Garden of Eden. You go back to the beginning, and God, one of the questions he asked Adam and Eve, who told you that? It's like, how ridiculous, But again, that's the freedom we have, is to own our own knowledge and not be led by somebody else's influence, especially in this informational age in which we live in, that we are getting bombarded with thousands upon thousands of information bites, all trying to dissuade us and get us away from God. That's really the bottom line, because they know that if we're connected to God, that we are basically invincible. The Holy Spirit protects and covers us, right, Currie? Well, Currie Myers.
Absolutely. Just put your faith in him, my friends.
Amen. Currie Myers, again, thank you so much for being with us. God bless you, my friend. You take care. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us and sharing a part of your day. For more information on the show, you can go to BillMartinezLive.com. May God bless you and keep you. May he make his face shine upon you. May he be gracious unto you and give you peace. God bless you.